The rain fell as if the sky itself had decided to wash the city of São Rafael that night. Lightning tore across the horizon, illuminating for brief seconds the windows atop the hill where the Montello mansion stood, an imposing estate surrounded by walls and secrets. At 3:27 a.m., the phone rang at the police station. A gunshot had been heard inside the property. When Detective Laura Mendes arrived, the iron gates were still dripping with rainwater, and the air carried the metallic scent of the storm mixed with something else, blood. The forensic team was already there but hesitant to cross into the absurd. Arthur Montello, billionaire businessman and influential political figure, lay slumped over his desk. A gunshot wound to the right temple. Pistol in hand. Half-empty whiskey bottle. Suicide, muttered Captain Freitas without emotion. Laura observed in silence. Her dark brown hair tied back, her eyes cold and analytical, she moved slowly around the body. No, she finally said. Something's wrong here. Freitas sighed. Come on, Laura. The guy had problems, debts, investigations, media pressure. His son said he'd been depressed. She crouched beside the body and examined the wound. The shot came from the right, but the gun's in his left hand. And look, no gunpowder residue on his dominant hand. Also, she raised her gaze to the wall behind the desk. There's no blood spatter consistent with a close-range shot. This was staged. Freitas turned away, annoyed. You see conspiracy even in the mirror. Laura didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the victim's wristwatch, stopped at 3:07. A small detail, but enough to ignite the instinct that had made her a quiet legend in the force. As the forensic techs took photos and samples, she noticed something else. A clean glass on the desk. 2 glasses actually. One with faint traces of lipstick. Who else was here with him? She asked. We don't know. The staff heard the gunshot and called the police. They were all asleep downstairs. Laura made a mental note. No one sleeps through that kind of noise. And no one breaks into a guarded mansion without disabling the alarm first. The problem was, the security system had mysteriously gone offline between 2:45 and 3:15 a.m., exactly the window of the crime. She stepped out into the hallway. The house was cold, luxurious, but carried the uneasy silence of a place where evil had just passed. On a side table, a framed photo caught her attention. Arthur smiling beside another man, Enrique Bastos, a real estate tycoon. Childhood friends, read the caption. She jotted the name down. In the living room, Daniel Montello, Arthur's son, waited with red eyes and trembling breath. My father, he was being threatened, he said between sobs. He'd been getting anonymous letters for weeks. They said they knew everything. Everything what? Laura asked. Business. People he shouldn't have gotten involved with. Do you still have those letters? They're gone. Last night someone came in. The office door was ajar, but we thought it was the wind. A chill ran down Laura's spine. Someone had erased every trace before the crime even took place. A clean, calculated murder. A perfect suicide. Hours later, at the morgue, she stood silently over the pale body under a white sheet. The coroner confirmed what she already suspected. No gunpowder residue on the hands, angle inconsistent with a self-inflicted shot. You mean someone killed him and placed the gun there? The doctor asked. Laura answered only with a tired look. Yes. And someone powerful enough to make it look like nothing ever happened. On the drive back, the police radio crackled with static and reporters' voices already announcing the tragic suicide of businessman Arthur Montello. The public narrative was being shaped with surgical precision. She glanced at her rearview mirror and felt it. Someone was following her. Headlights 2 cars back, keeping the same speed. When she accelerated, the car behind did the same. Her pulse quickened. Instinctively, she swerved sharply onto a side street and killed her lights. The other vehicle rolled past slowly, like a predator that had just lost its prey. Laura exhaled deeply. This wasn't just a case. It was a warning. Back at the station, she typed the initial report, but something stopped her from sending it. If she entered it into the system, it could be altered, deleted, corrected. She saved everything to a flash drive and locked it in her desk. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. But on the horizon of São Rafael, something far more dangerous than the storm was approaching. A game of power where every move would be watched. And Laura Mendes had just made the first one. The rain had given way to a thick fog that blanketed São Rafael that morning. The clock at the precinct read 8:15 when Detective Laura Mendes walked in, carrying in her eyes the weight of someone who hadn't slept. On her desk, she stacked folders, reports, and notes. The Montello case had been officially closed as a suicide, but she refused to accept the lie. As her coffee cooled in the cup, Laura reviewed the photos from the crime scene. 2 glasses, one of them with faint traces of lipstick. That detail bothered her like a stone in her shoe. Who was the second person in that room? She opened a confidential bank report she had obtained quietly. Montello had made million-dollar transfers to accounts belonging to shell companies in recent weeks. The recipients? All of them connected, directly or indirectly, to the name Enrique Bastos, the same man from the photograph in the office. Enrique wasn't just anyone. A tycoon, philanthropist, and close friend of politicians and judges, he controlled most of the city's construction contracts. A man who smiled for cameras, but made his enemies disappear in the shadows. Laura knew him by sight, and she knew that crossing him was like walking into a minefield. In the middle of her notes, an unmarked envelope appeared on her desk. No one had seen who delivered it. Inside was only a blurry photo: Arthur Montello and Enrique Bastos arguing in a restaurant, hours before Arthur's death. On the back, a handwritten message: "Not every suicide has the courage to pull the trigger." Laura froze. The handwriting was steady, deliberate. Someone was trying to help her, or perhaps just test her. She left the precinct and drove to Restaurante Arcole, the location shown in the photo. The manager confirmed that Montello had dined there the night of his death. Who was he with? Laura asked. With Mr. Enrique Bastos, the man answered, hesitant. But please, detective, don't mention my name. They don't like people asking questions. In the parking lot, she caught sight again of a dark car's reflection in her mirror, the same model from the night before. When she sped up, it followed. Laura swerved through alleys and side streets until she stopped abruptly beneath a bridge. She stepped out, gun drawn, heart pounding in sync with the adrenaline. The other car halted a few meters away. A man got out, black suit, cold expression. "Detective Mendes?" he said, raising his hands. "I'm from the prosecutor's office. Mr. Enrique would like to speak with you personally." Laura kept her weapon trained on him. "Tell him that if he wants to talk, he can send a warrant, not a thug." The man smiled. "Don't insult me. We're not enemies, yet." He returned to his car and drove off, leaving behind only the sound of tires on wet asphalt. Laura understood what that meant. Enrique Bastos knew she was coming. Back in her small apartment, Laura spread the photos and documents across the table. Every lead seemed to end in a dead end. Then the phone rang. "Detective Mendes?" A rough male voice. "Who is this?" "Let's just say someone who still believes in the truth." "You want answers? Go to Warehouse 43 at the docks. Midnight. And come alone." Before she could reply, the line went dead. She stood still for a few seconds. It could be a trap, but her instinct said otherwise. That voice didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like urgency. At midnight, the port was a maze of shadows and shipping containers. The air reeked of rust and seawater. Laura moved silently, gun ready. Inside Warehouse 43, she found a hooded man, nervous and trembling. "I'm Marcos, accountant for Montello Corporation. I saw what was happening. Arthur found out the company funds were being laundered by politicians and by Enrique. He gathered proof, planned to give everything to the press. But someone got to him first." "Do you have those files?" Laura asked. I hid them. But they're hunting me. A gunshot split the air. The man staggered and fell, blood spilling across the concrete. A second shot hit the wall beside Laura, who dove behind a container. Headlights cut through the gaps, voices shouted, "Find her." 2 shooters swept the warehouse. Laura rolled to the side and fired once, hitting the engine of one of their cars. The explosion thundered through the space. As flames spread, she ran to Marcos's body. He was still breathing, barely. "Metal box. Dock 7, he whispered before going still. Laura stumbled out through the smoke, face smeared, body shaking. Outside, sirens were already closing in. Within minutes, the scene would be taken and rewritten. She ran to Dock 7. Beneath loose planks, she found a small metal box. Inside, a flash drive and a folded note. "If you're reading this, I've failed. But the truth can still survive." Laura slipped the drive into the inner pocket of her jacket and vanished into the darkness. In the rearview mirror, she saw her own reflection. The fear still there, but something stronger burning behind it. The certainty she was on the right path. The wind blew in from the sea, cold and heavy, as if the night itself whispered that the game had truly begun. And now, Laura Mendes wasn't just investigating a crime. She was hunting power. The following dawn felt heavy, as if the entire city breathed beneath the weight of a secret. The sun hadn't yet risen when Laura Mendes parked her car in a quiet alley, opened her laptop, and inserted the flash drive she'd found in the metal box. The file required a password. She tried combinations, dates, names, nothing. With a sigh, she leaned back in her seat. Outside, fog draped over the buildings like a veil. A feeling of helplessness began to erode her focus. But Laura wasn't a woman who gave up. She took a deep breath and drove to the address of Davi Nunes, a reformed hacker who owed her a favor from an old digital corruption case. When he opened the door, he looked at her with a mix of surprise and caution. "Detective Mendes, thought you'd forgotten about me." "I didn't. I need you to crack a password. It's urgent." Davi led her into a room full of monitors and tangled cables. As he typed with almost artistic precision, he asked, "Who are you messing with this time?" "Someone who has the power to erase people." He chuckled, but the laugh died when the files opened. On the screen, dozens of spreadsheets appeared. Illegal transfers, the names of shell companies, politicians, police officers, and judges involved in money laundering and witness assassinations. At the top of the hierarchy, a digital signature, Enrique Bastos. Davi went pale. "You shouldn't be looking at this. If this is real, half the city's bought and paid for." Laura stared at the screen like someone facing the abyss. "So that's it." Montello tried to expose the scheme, and paid with his life. She copied the files to another flash drive and hurried out. But as soon as she got into her car, her phone buzzed. A message with no sender. "You're digging your own grave. Stop now or there's no turning back." Laura swallowed hard. Fear was there, but so was a growing rage. She knew she couldn't trust anyone, not even inside the police. When she arrived at the precinct, she noticed strange looks. Whispers. Captain Freitas was waiting in his office, arms crossed, expression cold. "Detective Mendes, I've received direct orders from the prosecutor's office. You're officially suspended from the Montello case." Laura felt her stomach drop. Reason? Improper conduct. Unauthorized access to evidence, violation of protocol, and a dissemination of confidential information. "This is absurd," she shouted. "Orders from above. Hand over your badge and your weapon." She stood there for a moment, staring at the man she'd once called a partner. "You're in on this too, aren't you, Freitas?" The captain looked away. "Go home, Laura. Please. Don't make this worse." As she walked out, the world spun around her. The department, her home, her life, had just turned its back on her. But she wasn't alone. Hours later, the phone rang. It was Davi. "They're tracking me, Laura. They hacked into my network. We need to disappear for a while. Meet me at the cabin by the reservoir." 1 hour. Rain was falling again when she reached the abandoned cabin. The sound of raindrops on the roof was the only noise. Davi burst in, breathless and soaked. "They know you have the files. The prosecutor's a puppet, and Enrique's behind everything. Can you hide the evidence? I can encrypt it and send it to international servers. But it'll draw attention. Then let it. I want everyone to know the truth exists." Davi started typing, but before he could finish, a metallic sound echoed outside. Laura turned off the lights and drew her gun. Through the window, shadows moved among the trees. "They found us," she whispered. A gunshot shattered the glass. Davi dove to the floor. Laura fired back twice and ran for the back door. The cabin erupted in flashes and splinters of wood. As they fled into the forest, she saw masked men searching the cabin. Professionals. "Damn, they've got military training," Davi gasped. "Don't stop," she ordered. After half an hour of running through mud and rain, they found shelter under a bridge. The distant sound of sirens told them the search was still on. Davi trembled but managed a weak smile. "You should have left me out of this, detective. And let them win? Never." She looked toward the city lights flickering on the horizon, distant, untouchable. The line between right and wrong was growing thinner by the hour. But Laura knew there was still a chance, a small opening to bring down Enrique Bastos and his entire network. That night, she typed a note into her phone. "When the system is corrupt, the law becomes silence. The truth needs someone to scream it, even if it kills them." As the cold wind cut through the night, Laura swore she wouldn't run. This time, she wasn't just a detective chasing a murderer. She was a woman fighting the rotten heart of her own city. And somewhere in a luxurious office, Enrique Bastos watched a recording of Laura fleeing the cabin. "She's good," he said to one of his men. "Do you want us to take care of her?" Enrique smiled calmly, like a king who already knew how the game would end. "Not yet. I want to see how far her instincts take her, before fear destroys her." The rain seemed endless. Heavy drops pounded against the shattered car window as Laura Mendes stared at her own reflection in the rearview mirror. Time had slipped away too fast since she became a fugitive. She was no longer a detective, she was a living threat to the system. The news painted her as a traitor, a murderer, a corrupt officer. Headlines lied, the TV anchors repeated the same script written by the powerful people she was trying to bring down. But Laura had something they didn't: evidence. Thanks to Davi, part of the files had been copied and hidden before the ambush at the cabin. And among those files was something that could destroy everything: a video. In the short footage, Arthur Montello appeared in a dark room, visibly nervous. "If anything happens to me, know that it wasn't suicide. Enrique Bastos is behind it all. He controls judges, politicians, even police commanders. They're laundering public money and buying silence. I can't carry this anymore." Laura paused the video, her heart racing. That was the key. But the video alone wasn't enough. It had to be verified, authenticated, and released to the public before they could suppress it. For that, she needed someone with reach. That's when she turned to Eduardo Rocha, an investigative journalist known for never backing down. She met him in a secluded cafe, windows covered, the air thick with the smell of mold. When she placed the flash drive on the table, he raised an eyebrow. "You realize what this means?" "I do. And I also know that if we screw up, we're dead by tomorrow." "Do you trust me?" "No. But I trust the truth." Eduardo gave a faint smile. "Then that's enough." In the following days, the two of them crafted a plan: gather supporting evidence, authenticate the footage, and prepare a live broadcast so nothing could be deleted once it went public. Meanwhile, the hunt for Laura intensified. Helicopters roared over entire neighborhoods. Unmarked cars followed her through the night. One evening, as she returned to the safe house, Laura heard a faint metallic click near the door. Adrenaline surged through her body. She stepped back. Seconds later, an explosion ripped through the hallway. The blast waved through her against the wall. The apartment was gone. If she'd walked in, she'd be dead. Shaking, she limped away, ears ringing. There was no longer any doubt. Enrique Bastos wanted her erased, and he would stop at nothing. The next morning, Eduardo arrived with news. "I got something big," he said, opening his laptop. He showed her photos and documents from a meeting between Enrique and the Attorney General, both signing a multi-million-dollar public works contract. They split the money. "If we cross these files with yours, it's the final blow." Laura looked at him with a mix of admiration and sorrow. "The final blow? You don't get it, Eduardo. Even if we win, they'll come back. They always do. The system is a serpent. You cut off one head and another grows." "Maybe. But if we do this right, the country will see what's behind the mirror. And sometimes that alone changes everything." She stayed quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Then we go all the way." But the end didn't come without a cost. On the way to their new hideout, a black car intercepted them. Glass shattered. Eduardo swerved, lost control, and the vehicle flipped, rolling until it landed upside down. Dazed, Laura crawled out, her body bruised. Men approached with guns drawn. One of them pulled back his hood. "Enrique Bastos. You're persistent, detective. You should have stopped when I warned you." Laura spat blood and smirked. "And let you keep killing? Never. You still don't get it, Laura. This isn't about good or evil. It's about power. And power is all that exists." He crouched down, his face inches from hers. "But if it makes you feel better, you were the most interesting opponent I've ever had." Enrique stood and cocked his gun. The click echoed through the night. Before he could fire, Eduardo, bleeding, grabbed a rock and hurled it at one of the gunmen. The shot went wide. Laura rolled to the side, pulling the pistol from her ankle holster. 2 shots. One hit a guard. The other grazed Enrique's shoulder, making him roar in pain. In the chaos, Laura and Eduardo sprinted toward the woods beside the road. The rain poured harder, lightning splitting the sky. "We have to release the files now," she said. "There's an abandoned TV station downtown. Its server still works. We can use it to broadcast everything. Then that's where we're going." As they ran through the night, Laura felt her body growing heavier, blood dripping from a deep cut on her arm. Eduardo limped beside her, panting. But there was something different in his eyes, not fear but conviction. The price of truth was already being paid. They both knew they might not make it out alive. "If I don't make it," she said, "promise you'll finish this." Eduardo nodded. "I promise, but you'll make it." That's what they never understand. Fear isn't enough to stop someone who has nothing left to lose. Laura looked toward the horizon, where the city lights flickered faintly in the distance. "Then let's light this city up, Eduardo." Let's make them see. And as the two disappeared into the darkness, the cold wind swept through the empty streets, carrying with it the omen that dawn would bring the final war between silence and truth. Evil still ruled the city. But for the first time, someone was willing to pay the price of truth. The day dawned gray over São Rafael. Fog hung low over the buildings, and the city seemed to hold its breath, as if it knew something monumental was about to happen. Laura Mendes stood atop an abandoned building, her face streaked with dirt and dried blood. She was exhausted, battered, and hunted. She had lost everything, her badge, her home, her safety. But she hadn't lost her purpose. In her pocket, she carried the flash drive Davi had managed to restore before he died. Yes, Davi was dead. The memory burned like fire. He had been ambushed while uploading the files to the cloud. Laura had arrived seconds too late, only in time to see him fall, eyes wide, his weak voice whispering, "Finish what we started." Since then, she had become a fugitive, chased by forces operating in the shadows. Corrupt police officers, businessmen, politicians, even journalists paid to destroy her. But Laura had something no one else did: the truth. That morning she entered the building of an old state TV station, mostly abandoned, where a journalist still willing to risk everything waited. Eduardo Rocha, investigative reporter and one of the few who believed her. "You sure you want to do this live?" he asked nervously. "It's the only way. If I disappear, the world needs to see this before they silence me." Eduardo glanced at the files and shook his head. "This is going to bring down a lot of people." Laura's eyes were grim. "It will bring down who deserves to fall." They set up a clandestine broadcast, connecting to multiple platforms. Laura knew that within minutes, her location would be discovered. When the red light of the camera flicked on, she took a deep breath and spoke. "My name is Laura Mendes. I was a detective in the São Rafael Police Department. I've been labeled a traitor, but the real betrayal lies within the corridors of power. Businessman Arthur Montello did not kill himself. He was murdered to cover up a corruption empire involving businessmen, judges, prosecutors, and police officials." Her voice wavered, but her gaze was steady. "I have proof. Names, accounts, transactions. It's all here. And it will all be published now." She plugged in the flash drive and began the upload. Documents, recordings, and contracts appeared on screen. Falsified contracts, incriminating emails, secret recordings. Within seconds, the network exploded. Thousands of views. Comments flooding in. Reactions escalating. But time was running out. Outside, sirens screamed closer. Armed men surrounded the building. "They're here," Eduardo whispered, pale. Laura grabbed her gun and positioned herself by the window. "Keep streaming. Don't stop." The first shot shattered the glass. Shards cut her face. She fired back, covering Eduardo as he protected the equipment. Footsteps echoed on the stairs, harsh, relentless. Enrique Bastos entered moments later, immaculate in his suit, a cold smile on his face. "You could have been someone important, Laura. A hero. But you chose martyrdom." "Heroes die in silence, Enrique. Martyrs make noise." He laughed, drawing a chrome pistol. "You think you can beat an entire system? No. But I can make it bleed." Enrique pulled the trigger, but before the sound rang out, Eduardo threw himself in front. A bullet hit his chest. Laura, driven by rage and instinct, fired her weapon. 2 shots. One hit a guard. The other grazed Enrique's shoulder, freezing him in surprise and pain. Sirens grew louder. Laura knelt beside Eduardo, holding his hand. "Did you do it?" he whispered weakly. "Yes. It's live. The world knows." He smiled faintly, eyes closing. "Then it was worth it." Minutes later, authorities stormed the building. Laura raised her hands, bloody, surrendered while the cameras kept rolling live. An officer glared at her, rage in his eyes, and reached for his gun, but another stopped him. The footage was everywhere. This woman, discredited and hunted, had exposed the powerful. There was no going back. In the following hours, headlines shook the nation. Scandal in São Rafael. Corruption network involves top businessmen and politicians. Detective Laura Mendes exposes scheme, arrested after historic live broadcast. Enrique Bastos was declared dead. Multiple arrest warrants were issued. Prosecutors, judges, and officials were removed from office. The truth had finally emerged from the shadows. Months later, Laura walked alone in the yard of a federal prison. Newspapers no longer talked about her every day, but the damage was done. The system had been exposed. A guard approached with an envelope. Inside was an anonymous letter. "Truth has a price, but it also has memory. You ignited the flame. The rest is up to the people now." She gazed out the window at the horizon. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky in gold. For the first time in a long time she felt peace. She knew she would never leave this place as she had entered, but she also knew she had won, not because she survived but because evil lost control. As the sun's rays cut across the prison yard, Laura closed her eyes and whispered, "May justice continue in the shadows, until the world is ready to see it in the light."